Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And then as more people maybe come in, we can let them in and we'll just keep going from there. So, my name is Amanda Villaveses. I am the director at Mental Health Blue. This is our wellness workshop today, Out with the Old Habits. And we are joined today by Lisa Sutton Williams, LCSW, LMFT, and Samantha Perkins, who is recently an author. And so, as far as I know, you haven't written any other books, right? Okay. And so today we're going to be talking about habits and growth, and we have three different topics. So we'll go through each speaker. We'll take a little mini break between each speaker, and you are welcome to ask questions, post them in the chat box. There will be a period maybe where we'll open it up a little bit, and we can hear your voices. Like I said, if you want to show your video, that's totally fine. If you want, I know it's kind of early. I don't know about you, but I am definitely pajamas on the bottom. So that's totally cool. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start here this morning with Lisa Sutton Williams and intuitive eating.
Good morning, everyone. I can't see any of you, but I'm just going to assume that you all are there. Again, like Amanda said, I am Lisa Sutton Williams. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm also a certified intuitive eating counselor. But before we kind of jump into that, I would love to invite you all just to do a little bit of breathing with me, just to kind of get settled and get ourselves in a good space to kind of receive some of this information today. So if you would, try to find like the most comfortable positioning that you can. Just kind of relax your shoulders. I like to kind of roll my shoulders back a bit just to kind of find myself in that good position. Maybe hands relaxed just a bit. Mine are on my thighs with palms up, but you feel free to do whatever you like. Right now in this space, I now just invite you to potentially close your eyes if that feels comfortable, maybe soften your gaze, or just leave your eyes open at this moment. And if you want to find an intention for today, maybe something that allows you to receive the information that will be given, maybe just open up a space in your heart just for acceptance of self today. We'll be learning a lot of information. So I just want you to be open to what's happening today. Right now, I just invite you to take a breath in, whatever is comfortable for you. It doesn't have to be a deep breath. Just something that's comfortable for you, maybe an inhale and an exhale. And I just invite you to see how that feels for you. Maybe notice what's going on in your body right now. If you're able to find any connection and attunement with that breath. And throughout this process, just continue to breathe at your own pace. Again, no right or wrong way for this, just something that feels comfortable for you. And if you find that your attention is no longer on your breath and it goes elsewhere, that's perfectly fine. Just gently bring it back to the breath and notice what that's doing in your body. No judgment, just acknowledgement. Maybe scan your body to see how that breath is interacting with different parts of your body. Maybe start with the top of your head and notice the differences and changes as you scan your body all the way down to your feet, piece by piece. Again, doing what feels comfortable to you in this very moment. Nothing more, nothing less. Just finding some comfort in your own body, your own awareness of self. Again, bring that attention back to the breath if you've noticed that you veered off just a little. Perfectly okay. Our minds tend to wander, but gently bring that back without judgment. Let's do a few more breath cycles here if you're okay with that. You may try to deepen the breath, the inhalation and the exhalation, just to see if any of that might change the feelings throughout your body. Again, notice that breath and bringing that awareness back to your breath. A few more breaths here. And once you're comfortable, if you feel okay, opening your eyes back up, maybe noticing your surroundings gently and getting reoriented into your space. And again, another option for you, if you feel comfortable, placing that left hand on your heart and the right hand over the left hand, taking a nice breath in, again, what feels comfortable, and releasing, and just appreciating what your body has just allowed you to do. All right, thanks you all. And so I do that this morning just as kind of an introduction into kind of what intuitive eating is. It's a lot of body work and it's a lot of attunement to self, which sometimes we don't always have for many, many different reasons. But intuitive eating itself was started almost 25 years ago, actually a little over 25 years ago, by Evelyn Tribole and Elyse Resch. And so I want to read something really quick just to give you kind of an overview of how they describe intuitive eating itself. Intuitive eating is a self-care eating framework which integrates instinct, emotion, and rational thought. It was created by two dietitians, Evelyn Tribole and Elyse Resch, in 1995. Intuitive eating is a weight-inclusive, evidence-based model with validated assessment scale and over 100 studies to date. So you may have heard about intuitive eating maybe just in the past year. It's gotten a little more well-known and out there, but it's been around. It's been around for about 26 years, and it's made some changes throughout, but it has been here for a while, and there's more evidence to kind of back up what intuitive eating is. And today I just want to give you a little breakdown of the principles of intuitive eating, because we're actually all born intuitive eaters, but somewhere along the way that shifts. And these 10 principles can help you find your intuitive eater again. Okay. All right. So the first principle in intuitive eating is reject the diet mentality. Now, that sounds kind of big. And so people are immediately like, oh, goodness, what do you mean reject the diet mentality? There's nothing wrong with diets. There's nothing bad about that. And that's perfectly fine. But given the research, if you look at it, diets work about 5% of the time. And this is on longitudinal studies, meaning over 5 years, you've maintained that particular weight loss. Now, if we look at anything different in our society that says, hey, this is not going to work, about 95% of the time, do you still want to try it? More times than not, we would say no. We just would. But this multi-billion-dollar industry continues to grow and grow by promoting that this weight loss is going to work, this is going to last, you're the failure, not the diet itself. And it's actually the complete opposite of that. These diets fail. We as individuals do not fail. So the first part of that is rejecting that diet mentality. And the diet itself is anything that kind of promotes, a weight loss or a strict binge kind of cycle. And that is something that we want to look more into just to see why we're actually following that. And so that is that first principle. The second principle here is to honor your hunger. Now, that seems simplistic in itself, but a lot of people don't actually do that. When it comes to food, we often tell ourselves, no, we don't need that. That's not something that I should be having right now. We try to tell ourselves that we don't need to do that. But in all actuality, if you're honoring your hunger, you're using some of that attunement, and you're also using something called interoceptive awareness. When it comes to this principle, it's something like if you can notice yourself when you ever have to go to the bathroom, you notice within yourself that you have to go to the bathroom. And you usually do. More times than not, you won't tell yourself, oh, well, I don't need to go to the bathroom. I just went 5 minutes ago, or I just went an hour ago. But we tend to do that when it comes to food. But biologically, our body tells us, hey, you need some food. That's perfectly fine. But somewhere in there, we have gotten these messages that we can't listen and we can't trust our own bodies. And that's why this second principle is honoring your actual hunger, whatever that is, which leads directly into the next principle of making peace with food. Now, making peace with food kind of gets us into this area, giving ourselves unconditional permission to eat, and that is all foods, all of them. There are no bad foods unless maybe it's moldy, it's rancid, or you have an allergic reaction to it. Other than that, food is food, but that is the place where we can make peace with that. If you feel like you want ice cream, eat the ice cream. If you feel like you want a salad, eat the salad. But in there, it's important for us to not try to replace those things with anything else. Often people hear, oh, well, I'm hungry. I need to eat, but I'll just drink some water. Okay, that's okay. But if you're still hungry, you should eat. Or replacing it with, oh, I'll just have a piece of gum. Well, your body is telling you that you're hungry, and it's very important for you to be able to honor that and also make peace with food so that you can allow yourself to have those foods that are there and present for you. And that moves us to challenging the food police. Now, this one is very, very challenging. Not to say that all of these others aren't challenging as well, but this one tends to be particularly challenging because of all the rules and messages that we receive, either from ourselves, from the larger society, social media, that tells us that there are these foods that are seemingly good or bad. And that goes along with that food police portion and being able to neutralize different foods. There are no good and bad, as I mentioned before, but neutralizing it into, I just would like to eat. They're just foods that I want to eat. And in your mind, you have to challenge that food police. If the food police is telling you like, you don't need that because you had this the other day, those are all food rules that we tell ourselves. Or oftentimes in the society of kind of dieting, if you eat this particular food this day, you shouldn't have it again that same day. That's one of those food rules. Another food rule might be not eating after a certain time. I don't know if you all heard that, but personally in my experience, I was like, okay, you can't eat after a certain time. That's not good for your body. It's good for your body if you're hungry. And that's where we've kind of gotten off of those messages, and we're listening to all these food rules and the food police, but now it's time for us to challenge that way of thinking. Why do you actually think that way? Who told you that that's something that you should or should not be doing? How does that serve you in this particular space? So I really want us to think about that when we get through these steps, is how you can challenge the food police. Again, all of these are very challenging, but sometimes this particular one is more challenging because it's some internal struggles that we have. It's also some external ones, but we give ourselves these rules as well. The fifth principle is discovering the satisfaction factor, which sounds great. It's really just that ability to eat food and enjoy it. A lot of times we are too busy, we are moving, we're scrolling through something, and we're not really getting the satisfaction out of our food. It's ideal if you can, and I know it's not always something that we can do, but creating a comfortable space and a good environment for us to eat our food. Not rushing, not being distracted. That helps you enjoy the food. And then you're kind of knowing how you're feeling about it. Do I actually enjoy this food? Is it something I'd want to eat again? A lot of times when we're in this discovering the satisfaction factor, we find out there are foods that we actually don't like, or that we've made ourselves eat over and over again because they're good foods and we have to eat them, and we realize we don't like them. Or other foods that we have potentially binged on in the future. And when you actually take the time to taste these foods, they don't have its intensity anymore. And that's why we want to have that kind of neutrality of foods. So within this satisfaction factor, you can actually think and listen to your body and decide if these are the foods that I actually want to be eating and that are good for my body. The next one, along with that again, is feel your fullness. Now, this requires a lot of attunement. And part of that in doing our intro of little breath work and a little meditation was just to notice what's happening in your body. When you're feeling your fullness, you really want to be able to notice if I'm hungry. Am I full enough? Did I get enough of this particular meal? Is it time for me to stop? Do I want more? But you really need to notice that and listen to the signs and signals that your body is giving you at that particular time. Sometimes we're more and less full. That is a process. It is not going to be perfect all the time, but you have to kind of learn to listen to the cues that your body is giving you, because it's given them to you for a particular reason. And our next one, as we go on to number 7, is to cope with your emotions with kindness. Now, initially back in some previous versions of intuitive eating, this was cope with your feelings without food. And so Evelyn and Elise have since learned, like, no, sometimes it's okay to cope with your feelings with food. And a lot of people get really nervous about that. And they're like, well, oh my gosh, that might turn into a binge. I'm an emotional eater. I can't control myself. Some of those things might be true, but sometimes our bodies do need food as comfort in that moment. Now, the rest of this is to really acknowledge what else is going on with my body. You know, is it really that I need this food? Do I need something else? Am I anxious? Am I sad? And that's that attunement to your feelings and finding ways to comfort and nurture yourself that might involve food, that might not involve food. Okay. The next principle is respecting your body. Now, it's really, really hard to reject the diet mentality when you have a hard time respecting your body and what it's doing for you, and what it has done for you in the past and will continue to do in the future. Like accepting and appreciating your body at its current size and shape is what's really most important here. And now another aspect of this respecting your body, I'm just going to throw this in here, is would be great for you all to maybe look into some health at every size. Now, this is a different kind of framework, but it's definitely supported by intuitive eating. It was created by Lindo Bacon, but it's just an aspect of respecting your body. Like his first book actually is Body Respect. And there's another one that they have done as well, but it's just promoting like you can be healthy at any size. Our bodies don't determine, our body size does not determine if this person is healthy or that person is healthy. You can't look at a person and tell if they're healthy based on their size. So really that's just about respecting your body, what it's done for you, and what it continues to do for you. Number 9 is movement. Feel the difference. Now this personally is one of my favorites because I really enjoy moving. I love how my body feels when I move. Now, if you can shift your focus do this principle, this 9th principle, to doing exercise or movement or anything else because it feels good for you, not as a punishment or as a consequence of some food that you ate. In diet culture, it's often seen as, here, you need to work out. And after you work out, maybe you can have this particular food. There's even shirts that say like, working out for wine or whatever else it is. Like, although it's cute in that respect, if our brains think that we have to do this for a particular food, we've moved ourselves all the way back to number 4 with those food rules, giving us space to just move our body. And again, in previous versions of intuitive eating principles, even the past one in the 3rd edition, it said exercise, feel the difference. They have since changed that to movement because exercise can be so polarizing, and people had some different feelings about that. So if you're moving your body, that can be walking, that can be running, pardon me, that can be dancing, it can be just about anything, gardening, rolling around on the floor with your kids. It can be anything at all, actually. So noticing when you're doing those movements, like how you actually feel, and that is feeling the difference. I'm so sorry. This is terrible. Okay. All right. So 10 is honor your health, gentle nutrition. Now, the rest of these principles, they don't necessarily need to go in any order, but it can be helpful if you do them in the order that the intuitive eating originators kind of have told us. But this principle of gentle nutrition more than likely should be done as the last one. When gentle nutrition is not done in this particular step, it's often turned into just another diet. Now, when we're in this gentle nutrition phase, it's really about noticing the kinds of foods that fuel your body the best. So it might be having this particular food here and noticing like, oh, I don't actually like how that feels, but I know I need some particular nutrients. And so maybe I can get it from this other food. Now, if you do this too early in the process, you end up making it steps that you need to do. Like, okay, well, I need to have a green here. I need to have a fat here. I need to have this here. And so if you're doing that too early, you've turned it into these steps that end up being a diet. And that's what we don't want, which is why Evelyn and Elise have put this at the bottom to kind of encourage us to do all these other steps to find attunement with our body, to honor our hunger, to challenge the food police and notice what's going on with our bodies before we get to this gentle nutrition portion. Now, all of these principles are here as a guide. Again, like I said, they don't have to be done in any particular order, but they're there to let you know that all of these steps really are needed in order to become a great intuitive eater. All right, so as we move on here, I wanted to give you a couple of tips to kind of start your intuitive eating journey. So the first one would be to read Intuitive Eating. They are currently in the 4th edition, as I mentioned before. Their 1st edition started in 1995, and so things have changed and morphed into some really awesome things. And they've just kind of revamped some of their language that they used early on and have noticed that some of the language that they're using now is more inclusive. So the 4th edition actually just came out last year. So it's very, very new. So I would definitely recommend that you read Intuitive Eating. The 3rd edition actually is on Audible for free right now. So if you have an Audible, if you're like me, I love a good audiobook. I would recommend doing the 3rd edition too. But if you want to buy the 4th edition, that's where it's at. Okay. The next one would be to work with a certified intuitive eating counselor. That's myself. Actually, I am the only certified intuitive eating counselor in Kentucky that's an actual mental health professional. There are about 5 others that are dietitians, but I am currently the only mental health professional. I'm hoping those numbers bump up because we really want to see more of this intuitive eating work being done in Kentucky and everywhere for that matter. So you can look on the intuitive eating website to find a certified intuitive eating counselor, but there's also people that are just well-informed about intuitive eating and HAES, which is health at every size. And so if you're working with someone, ask them if they're aware of this and they use this particular framework, and that can be of great benefit to you. When you are using a certified intuitive eating counselor, they might be better equipped to help you with some of the nuances that come with intuitive eating and starting that process. When working with a mental health professional, they can help you kind of integrate those things into your mental health issues that might be associated with intuitive eating, or your diet and food rules that you have previously, which might be some anxiety around food, some anxiety in general, maybe some depression, some worth, body image issues. Working with that particular professional is going to help you work and get through those things. So I definitely recommend that. All right. My next one is going to be listening to any kind of intuitive eating podcast. Intuitive eating podcasts are all over the place. So I do caution you, everything that says intuitive eating is not, but I have two that I definitely recommend. It's the Food Psych podcast with Christy Harrison. And I recommend this one first because it is the one that particularly changed my life. I happened upon this particular podcast and they were talking about intuitive eating and food rules. And I was just so blown away that all the information that was there based on this non-diet, anti-diet approach. And it kind of took me over. And so that's where I started. There's also another podcast called Diet Riot that I would love for you all to kind of look at, just to see if anything kind of sparks your fancy or intrigues you just a little bit. But there are definitely plenty more out there, but I did want to give a couple of specific examples for you today. The next is to follow some intuitive eating specialists on social media. Obviously, Evelyn and Elise, but there are a couple more names there. But I say this because oftentimes if we're in our social media, our feed tends to follow the things that we were previously interested in or might be interested in now. You might have people in your feed that are dieters, that are doing these before and after photos that might be triggering to your intuitive eating journey and not, help and support the newfound information that you have. And it's very important when you're looking at your social media that you kind of diversify your feed. So finding people who look like you, who don't look like you, who have the same body shape, who don't have the same body shape. I think that's very important. And just knowing kind of what feeds into you and kind of what serves you and helps you to kind of be your best self within that social media framework. And I'm sure Amanda will talk a little bit more about kind of social media and how that impacts you in your overall health and mental health for that matter. And the last one that I have for you is listen to your body. Like, if you don't take anything away from what I've said today about intuitive eating as a whole, I would love for you just to listen to your body. Your body is giving you messages all of the time. And if you're able to listen to those things, you can do what's best for your body. A lot of diets are designed to kind of tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing. But as we know, everybody's not the same. So these diets, they don't actually address what's best for you. It puts you in this big box and says, okay, everybody's going to eat this much. Everybody's not going to eat this. But that might not be what's best for your body. So I really encourage you to listen to your body and do what's best for your body, because all bodies are worthy and all bodies are valuable. So that's all I have for you today. Again, my name is Lisa Sutton Williams. If you want to get in contact with me, you can follow me on Instagram. I am intentional_connections, or find my website at intentionalconnectionscounseling.com. So thank you all so much for being here with me today. And if you all have any questions, feel free to kind of let me know.
Thank you, Lisa. That was great. I learned a lot, actually. So I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
If anything, I appreciate it. Thank you. And
awesome.
I know
that's all I want.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? We can open it up for a minute or two if anybody has a question or like is curious. I know Lisa was like, I feel like you were pretty thorough.
There's so many nuances. Like, I tried to make it as detailed as I can, pretty specific, but that's what you can do with your therapist, your certified intuitive eating counselor. There's a lot of nuance there when it comes to, like there's other areas, of course, that I'm passionate in, which and come with like food insecurity, intersectionality of like race, gender, sexual orientation. Like, there's so many things that kind of integrate there that it's not talked about in these principles, but that's definitely something that you can further look into.
Yeah, we humans are very layered and complex.
Oh my. So
Yeah. Well, again, if you have any questions or if you want to you can contact Lisa. We put her contact up. We'll also send you all like an email recap afterwards with, all the contact info. So if you didn't catch it at the very end, you'll have it. Otherwise, what we'll do is we're going to take like a minute and we'll get Samantha set up. It looks like you're actually ready. And we are going to say thank you, Lisa, so much. And now we're going to transition to Samantha Perkins, who is author of Alive AF, which recently came out. And you can get it at on Amazon and other places, right? Or mostly, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Carmichael's if you're in Louisville. So.
Yay! So Samantha, I will pass it on to you, and you can tell everybody what you're going to talk about, and go ahead and get started.
Okay, awesome. Lisa, that was great. Sorry.
Oops. Sorry.
That's okay.
I muted you and not me. Sorry.
Okay. I was just saying, Lisa, that was so awesome, really helpful. And I couldn't help but think about how useful that would have been along my journey, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But anyway, great information. Thank you so much. All right, so this is my first time using this cute little cuteness here, my presentation. So bear with me if I make any mistakes, but I'm Samantha Perkins and I am the author of Alive AF, which, let's see. Sorry. Okay. I'm going to try to figure out how to use this. There we go. So I just wrote this book, came out on January 1st, and this is a story about kind of my journey to becoming alcohol free. And I'm a mom and I have anxiety. And for most of my adult life, I spent my time trying to figure out how to ease that anxiety and get rid of it. And I, much like Lisa was referring to, would follow people or listen to certain advice. And I was doing all kinds of things for myself, exercising and meditating and using diets and eliminating certain things from my life and adding certain things back into my life. And, you name it. And I was trying to do it in addition to therapy and medication and other things. But what I found was that throughout all of that, I was still drinking alcohol. And during this time, I had no idea how alcohol impacts mental health. I thought I knew a lot about alcohol and I thought I knew how it impacted people. And I had all of these ideas about it, which I'm getting ready to talk about, but I had no idea how much it really impacted mental health. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit, starting with some myths that I had. And feel free to ask questions or post anything in the chat if you guys want me to answer that while we're talking. Okay, so I thought a couple things, that you were either kind of a drinker or you were an alcoholic. And based on my upbringing and the culture that kind of we have here in the United States around drinking, these were the two categories that I thought people fit into. I knew a lot of people who drank, friends of mine, people that I had gone to church with as a child, my parents, yoga instructors, clergy, just all kinds of different people in my life that drank. And I knew some alcoholics, people that had the severe rock bottom story where alcoholism had caused some sort of giant problem. Maybe it was a DUI or an accident of some kind, an arrest, or other severe issues. And so I was kind of in between this. I was just a drinker. And even though I woke up every day having anxiety, I didn't really connect the two because I assumed if I wasn't an alcoholic, well, why would I ever consider not drinking? And so that was my biggest myth, was just that those are the two types of people that drink or don't drink. But here are some other myths that I kind of believed to be true. I thought that since alcohol was going to be safe for you as long as you're not addicted. I thought you can only become addicted to alcohol if you have a family history of alcoholism. I thought that those who drink massive amounts of alcohol are the only people who can become addicted. And let's see if I can come up. Yeah, here's some more. I figured since alcohol is legal, it must be safe. Unlike all those other unsafe drugs that are illegal, I figured that since the government allowed us to drink, that it was just fine for us to do so. I thought it was less dangerous than other drugs like marijuana, cocaine, opioids, meth, etc. I thought that drinking moderately meant drinking a few or 3 or 4 drinks per day. I thought alcohol makes life more fun. And personally, I believed that I would have no social life, no friends, and that I would just live a very boring and mundane life if there was no alcohol involved. And so these were kind of the myths that I think both culturally we hear about, and also just my own personal upbringing and my small circle. I just didn't have a very good view of alcohol. I'm going to work on, sorry, I can't talk and PowerPoint present at the same time. Okay, so once my anxiety reached a peak level, I decided to think, started doing a little bit of research, and I happened upon a blog, and I can share that, and we can put it back in that email that Amanda was talking about. I found a woman, her name was Holly Whitaker. She's pretty well known now, but at the time she was writing about sobriety in a much different way. She was talking about alcohol and the science behind alcohol, something that I'd never once thought about researching or discovering or understanding how it worked. I just figured that I learned in college, if you drink too much, you're going to wake up with a really bad headache. And that's just a consequence for having had too much to drink the night before. I didn't know why my body was reacting that way. And it never really occurred to me to ask. And so when I happened upon this woman, I was led to some books and some other information and websites about really what alcohol is, first of all, and how it affects our body. And I started learning some facts that broke down and changed a lot of these myths that I had. So first of all, the biggest one that I learned is that alcohol is in fact the most dangerous drug. So it is responsible for killing 88,000 people per year, which is a lot more than, opioids, which we hear about a lot right now, being a horrible pandemic going on, and other drugs. So when we think about dangerous drugs, I know we're thinking heroin and cocaine, and yes, these are super, super dangerous. But in terms of rate of death, alcohol kills more people. Alcohol is super addictive. It's not just addictive to people who have a predisposition to addiction. Alcohol is meant, in the very science of which it is created, to form addiction. And we'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. I'm also going to talk about the role that marketing plays in kind of breaking down some of these facts. But let me go over a couple more facts. Okay. As far as being legal, alcohol was kind of legalized, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how cigarettes were also legalized, and now we know a little bit about how dangerous those are. Everyone knows cigarette smoking causes cancer, but when they first came out, it wasn't like that. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the marketing and how maybe my beliefs were formed with the myths, and how our culture's beliefs around alcohols might be formed. And I'm going to start with cigarettes. So I'm going to show you guys this. So this used to be old cigarette marketing. The smooth taste expectant mothers crave. I mean, isn't this just hilarious? And obviously, when we look at that, you're thinking, oh my God, even when I pulled this up, I'm like, don't put that cigarette out immediately, because we know that cigarettes not only cause cancer, but they're really bad for pregnancy as well. And so knowing what we know now, you couldn't imagine someone coming out with an ad like that, but they did. And I think the cigarette companies realized that we can sell a lot more cigarettes if we target women as well as men, because there was a time when smoking was just for men, just like drinking, which I'm going to get to. And so that's just one of the ads that used to be given for women. Here's another one. Going back to the intuitive eating. These two ads are kind of like, if you smoke, you will be skinny. And again, back in the day, if you're thinking about how you can lose weight and you're hearing ads like this, then you're probably going to pick up smoking. And that's okay, if you were misled and you decided to pick up smoking, but smoking, much like drinking, is addictive. And so once you pick it up, it's just not as easy to be like, oh, whoops, I got that information wrong. And so now I'm not going to do that anymore. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So just like smoking, alcohol also realized back in the day that they can sell more drinks if they start marketing toward women. And so a couple of ways that they did that was to kind of accentuate women in the workplace, that you can, be an executive woman and you can still drink your vodka. And this is such a great example of a woman kind of with a tie, cleaning up the office party, having her drink, and, just being, a strong woman. Another huge thing that happened was when alcohol companies got the idea when the movement was happening about feminism. And so here's a great example, which is I never thought of burning my bra until I discovered Smirnoff. So this is them trying to pair burn your bra, drink your liquor, here come women, okay? And so there was a time when, drinking for many women, and a lot of women talk about this in the sober community, was part of trying to be into the boys club or, considered an equal because of the pressure. And then, of course, going back to the vanity of looks, here's another one about, a man's got his hands around her face, keep up whatever you're doing. And then there's a bottle of liquor, it must be drinking. And so these ads in regards to drinking don't make alcohol seem dangerous. They don't make alcohol seem addictive. They don't talk about hangovers or the side effects. And as a child, I probably saw some of these ads just watching, the shows that I watched with my parents. And so these are how some of my beliefs were formed around alcohol. These days, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let me go back here. Just give me a second. Okay. So alcohol kind of did its job back in the day, forming the path and making us think that alcohol is cool, it's safe, it's what we do, it's how you can have fun, it's how you can relieve stress, it's how you can get a good night's sleep, it's how you can take the edge off, it's how you can be part of the party or feel included. And so you can kind of see how this began. And so when I was searching for anxiety remedies, this is what I thought, how could it be the alcohol? I don't have alcoholism. And I would get on these sites and I would Google things like, am I an alcoholic? This is something I Googled on a regular basis. And it would always come up as no, I did not drink in the mornings. I didn't have a DUI. Alcohol wasn't impacting my functioning, although it was, but not in the way that the text read on the questionnaire. It was more talking about, this detrimental things that happened once you had alcoholism. And all the texts and all the sites that I said reminded me that alcohol is really, really bad if you're addicted. But it didn't say alcohol is just not that great. Nobody said drinking is bad. And so a couple things that I learned to kind of break down this. First of all, alcohol causes and is linked to, it's linked to 7 different types of cancer. It's highly cancerous, much like cigarettes are linked to lung cancer and several different kinds of cancers. Alcohol is too. And it's really hard to find information on this, and you can imagine why, and that has something to do with the massive business that alcohol is. But there are research and lots of different websites, including the American Cancer Society, that will tell you that 0 alcohol if you want to reduce your risk of cancer. And so it's just, I had no idea. And so I don't think alcohol companies are not yet made to put the warning labels on their bottles. It's something that they're undergoing right now, but they're not there yet. And there's a lot of companies that are working to resist that, because who wants to put a big label on their bottle that alcohol causes cancer? No one does. Much like the cigarette companies didn't want to have to put it on their, cigarette cartons. But it's going to come down the road, I have no doubt, and it's very close to being, having to be put there. The other thing is alcohol disrupts our body's natural functioning. Okay. So even if you're just drinking a little, which by the way, moderate drinking is 1 drink per day for a woman. Okay. Now this also has something to do, your size and your metabolism and all of these things. And so you might be thinking, oh, well, I don't drink every day, but that's only 7 drinks per week. So let's say you had 4 at the game on Saturday, and you had 3 on mom's wine night, and you had 3 on, 2 mimosas at the baby shower, and then a glass of wine that night. Well, now you've already exceeded your moderate drinking. And I like to say this because when I read it now, moderate means middle, not mild, So, a lot of times we're thinking we're moderately drinking because we're just having a few. But moderate drinking can significantly increase your risk of cancer. It can also significantly significantly impact your body's functioning. Okay. So here's what alcohol does, no matter if you're drinking 1 glass of wine or 1 beer, or if you're drinking 100, it's a sleep disruptor. So if you drink too close to bedtime and you end up passing out instead of falling asleep, you're going to really impact your sleep. You're not going to get to the nice REM sleep that you're supposed to have in order for your body to heal and function. It's going to impact your mental health. So when you start drinking alcohol, your body releases some feel-good chemicals, okay? And it's like, woohoo, this is awesome. And this is why people like drinking, because it makes you feel really good at first. But once you stop drinking, your body's like, whoa, where did all those chemicals go? And it starts working in overdrive to get everything back to right again. And while it does that, it releases a lot of adrenaline and cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So a lot of times, and for me in particular with anxiety, what happens is I had a bad day, I felt anxious. So I decided to have a few glasses of wine and a beer or 2, okay? Maybe 3, maybe 4 drinks. So I wake up in the middle of the night and I have a little bit of a headache. My mouth is dry. And now all of a sudden my heart's pounding really fast because that alcohol is working its way out of my system. And while it's working its way out, I'm getting an overdose of cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So what do I wake up feeling? More anxious. And as the day goes on, I'm feeling worse. And so I'm just waiting until 5 o'clock so I can take the edge off with a drink. And then I do that and I start the cycle all over again. So a lot of times you're going to hear people say, well, drinking just relaxes me. It's the only thing that I can do to relax. Well, part of that is because you've probably always been drinking. And so if you were drinking, you have more stress than you would if you weren't drinking. And I can talk more about that in a bit. The other thing is alcohol increases your risk of injury and illness. So it's bad for your system. It suppresses your immune function. And so now you're making yourself more risk for getting just sick in general. You can get colds, or you might, pick up something because your immune system can't be working properly. It also really messes up your liver function. Okay. And your liver is such a vital part of keeping your body and everything moving properly. But your body thinks that alcohol is poison because it has ethanol, and ethanol is poisonous. That is what makes ethanol is the thing that makes you drunk in alcohol. And so when you start drinking it, your body's like, whoa, poison. And so it stops doing all the things that it's supposed to do, and it starts trying to fix the poison. Okay. And so while you're drinking, your body isn't doing these wonderful things. Your liver isn't detoxifying your body in the way that it's supposed to. And all of your chemicals are getting disrupted, and they're not going to work properly. Let's see. Oh, and then also because of all of this, alcohol is just highly addictive. And so what happens is, and I just talked about this in my social media yesterday, there's so much science behind this, but once you start drinking, alcohol is like, woo, or your brain's like, woo, alcohol, this is nice. I want more of that. And so you drink more of it. And once you have a little bit more, then you might be getting a little bit tipsy. You might be feeling a little bit drunk. And when you do, then you're not making good judgment in any way. So then you might end up having more. And the more you drink, the more you drink. And that is kind of where culture wants you to think that it's just these alcoholics, these people with a problem that get addicted to alcohol. And while that may be true that some people have a predisposition, or they have a different set of chemicals in their body, that doesn't make alcohol any less addictive for the normal person. And you might have noticed this, if you ever wondered, there's a line in a song that I constantly repeat. It says, one is one too many, one more is never enough. And it's because you might think, oh, I'll just have one glass of wine. And then before you know it, you have two and maybe even more. But if you've ever just gone for that second or third and then you wonder why, it might not be the alcohol talking. Or it might not be you talking. It's the alcohol talking. Your body's craving more of it now because it's an addictive substance. Okay. So with all that being said, does anybody have any questions? I know I'm kind of covering a lot of information and talking really fast. Okay. So the other thing that we have going on in this culture is just this massive amount of talk and obsession with alcohol. Now, when I was the drinking person, I never saw this as being a problem. In fact, it very much kind of gave me the validation that drinking is okay. And especially among mom culture, but also just in general, there's this idea that whatever you got going on, at the end of the day, you can drink your problems away. Of course, unless, of course, you're an alcoholic and then don't drink at all. And that's kind of the message that we get. And so these messages are so ingrained that I don't even think we notice them. And I used to think that they were super funny, and I would laugh my head off when I saw something like this. And now I understand that the more that you see things like this, the more damaging it can be. Let's see, just a second. I got to find this. Here we go. So here is a cute little Michelle, I think is her name, from Full House back in the day. She said, you can read it. When my friends ask if I'm down to drink, every day, all day, anytime, anywhere. And of course, haha, super funny. Here's another one. When the doctor says you need to watch your drinking. Okay, you can all think of these things that you saw. You saw them yesterday on social media. You saw them this morning. There was a Tonight Show episode where they were demonstrating the hilarious shirts that are out right now. So many COVID memes like this about drinking and, to get through COVID. And so on the surface, this looks innocent, right? Because going back to the myths that we have around alcohol must be safe because it's legal. Oh, I'm not addicted to alcohol because I'm not an alcoholic. Alcohol doesn't affect me in that way. So we look at these things and we're like, oh, that's hilarious. But the truth is that these kinds of things, alcohol doesn't have to do nearly as much marketing as they used to, because we're kind of doing it for them, putting out this information about alcohol and making it seem like everyone drinks all the time. It's perpetuating those ideas that alcohol is what we do. Alcohol is there, how we get through the fun times, how we get through the sad times, and for people like me, I was like, oh, haha, see, they're doing it too, when really not having any idea that alcohol was severely impacting my anxiety. And so I think it's just, with my book, it's just a very personal story about the things that I did. I'm not here to tell people not to drink, but I do kind of always go in with the idea that I want people to know what they're drinking. And if they choose to do that, so be it, but do it under the right circumstances. When we say that we deserve a drink, or that drinking is good for us, because there's lots of articles that say that a little bit of wine is good for you, which have been totally refuted, I think that's the right word, by organizations that will tell us that that's not true. When people choose to drink, do it because that's what you decide to do, but don't do it under the umbrella that it's good for you, or that it's going to take away your anxiety, or that it's going to solve your problems, or that it's the only thing that can help you relax. And so I'm just there to kind of break away from these stigmas that you can only assess your relationship with alcohol if you're an alcoholic, or if you have alcoholism, or if you have a family history. And I'm also here to talk about just the direct correlation of anxiety and drinking and how it really increases it. A really great sober woman, her name is Laura McCowan, and she writes, drinking is like pouring gasoline on anxiety. And once I discovered that, it was just so, so true. And I still have anxiety. However, it's nowhere near the irrational. It's just nothing like it used to be. It's so much better. And so I'm just here to tell people that, and kind of to be someone who maybe doesn't have that rock bottom alcoholism story, who decided to stop drinking and evaluated how alcohol impacted my health. In the same way that we look at sugar and carbs and screen time and all of the other things that we hear about every day on how we should take care of ourselves, let's add alcohol into the mix. That's all.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Samantha. I actually am curious. Could you tell people a little bit about like what changes you noticed when you did decide to stop drinking? When you were like, "Oh, I think this could be alcohol affecting me," and then like, how are you managing your anxiety today?
Great questions. Yeah, so at first, it was really hard because I had to undo all of these ideas that I had that alcohol was helping me. And at first, it was many, many years that I thought alcohol was my best friend. So at first, it kind of felt a little bit like a breakup, like, oh no, this is this thing that I've loved for so long and who's been with me through good times and bad. And so it was a really hard, transition, but within just a few weeks well, first of all, I could sleep better. I had anxiety, but I didn't have monkey mind as much. I didn't have irrational thoughts. I didn't have ruminating thoughts in the same way that I had. And so it was such a quick change in those ruminating thoughts. I did, however, start to feel my anxiety a little differently than I had in so long because I'd been numbing, I didn't have to feel it in any way. But when I felt it, it was a much more, I had an understanding around it. I had a lot of kind of, just paralyzing fear around things when I was drinking. But this was much more like, okay, I know what I'm feeling now. This is anxiety. And so I had to seek out a lot of help for that anxiety or therapy for that, just to feel the feelings. And I still do that. So when I stopped drinking, I had all kinds of space and time to do other things. And, at first, all I was doing was thinking about drinking, recovering from drinking. I didn't have a lot of room for anything else. So when I stopped drinking, I had time for journaling. I had time for reading and learning about ways to manage my anxiety. I had time for breath work. I had time for taking walks and listening to podcasts. And I had time for just a lot more self-care. And so I really used that time for taking care of myself and learning some real coping skills to anxiety versus just trying to numb it.
Awesome. Thank you. That's good to know. I think it's really scary for a lot of us to think about taking our coping mechanism for the moment and getting rid of it. It's like getting rid of your security blanket or something. Do we have any questions for Samantha? You are welcome to go ahead and ask those. I think everybody's maybe a little shy this morning, which is totally fine. Not going to pressure you all.
Hey, Amanda, do you mind if I say something really quick?
Go for it. Yes.
All right. Thanks, Samantha. I really, really enjoyed that. And I think one of the last things you said was talking about like that grieving period of like, oh, I have this thing and I thought it was doing great for me and now it's not. Very similar thing with intuitive eating. There's a large grieving period. Some of that is because you were in a community of which for yours, it could have been a community of drinkers. Now you're in a community of people that were working out excessively or were telling you what you could and couldn't eat. And so now your ideas have shifted. So there's definitely a grieving period to what you're talking about also with kind of intuitive eating. And so I just loved kind of connecting that just now. Thanks.
Yeah, I love that, Lisa. It's like anytime we make a change in our lives, there's always going to be an uncomfortable growth period. and if we know it, then it's a little bit easier to manage and get through, right? Okay, so we are going to take just like a 2-minute break if you want to get up and get some water or stretch. And then I will start my talk on social media. All right. And you're also welcome to ask some questions and throw them in the chat box if you want. Okay. That may have not been a full 2 minutes, but hopefully that gave you a moment to run to the restroom, grab some water, whatever you needed to do. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to make sure I can actually, I won't be able to see the chat box with my little presentation here, but you are welcome to ask questions and I'll kind of bounce back and forth into our meeting to look at any questions you might have. You're welcome to ask questions at any point. So we're going to go ahead and get started here talking about social media and our habits around social media. And I want you to just think right now, start to kind of like get your mind going around what are your social media habits? Okay. So how many of you, I'm going to ask you a question. I just told you I can't see the chat box. Okay, now I can. How many of you feel like you have a social media problem? Just type yes or no in the little chat box there. Oh, it's silent so far. No. Oh, yep. There we go. I was like, dang, you guys, you're great. Okay, no, rarely on anymore. That is, notice what has to happen, right? We have to be rarely on to kind of not have it be a problem. So this is actually like social media addiction isn't really a diagnosis yet. Although gaming disorder and gaming addiction, I believe, is as far as the ICD-10, which is in Europe, and we use it here as well a little bit. But as far as the DSM, which is what therapists use to diagnose, it's not quite there yet, but it is, kind of starting to become more and more of something people are looking at as far as like a behavioral addiction or behavioral habits. They kind of change the word around it or change our wording around addiction. So yeah, internet gaming disorder was to be included in 2020 for the ICD-10 or ICD-11 update. So we can't diagnose you just yet, but we can, kind of say like we all know what our social media habits are, right? So I want to play a quick little game, and you've probably not played this since high school, and it's called Never Have I Ever. And so I want you to you can hold your hand and, you're going to put your hand up. You can make a little, actually, we're going to just go like this. And then every time I name something, if you've done it, just like put a finger down. Okay. So let's see. Never have I ever used social media just to veg out after a long day. Never have I ever posted on social media only to check how that post is doing, like right after, right? Like, did I get any likes? Did anybody read it? Do they know how witty I am? Never have I ever checked my social media during work or school, while driving, during a work meeting, during therapy, any kind of time, right? Never have I ever found myself opening my social media without realizing it. So maybe it's on your phone, you pick up your phone to text somebody, and next thing you know, you're on one of the many social media options. And then never have I ever spent way more time than I intended on social media. Like maybe you get your little phone update at the end of the day and you're like, oh my gosh, look how much time I spent on social media. So who has like a fist at this point? Yeah. I would say I've fallen into this category. I totally understand. And I think a lot of us have experienced this, right? Because this is how social media is set up so that we want to come back and we do kind of mindlessly interact with it. I mean, in a sense, it's a very brilliant marketing and like ad or app development. There's a reason Facebook is so rich. So when we talk about addiction, like how addicted are you really, right? So let's look at the facts. It's estimated that about 5 to 10% of Americans would meet the criteria for, and again, in quotes, because it's not it's not in the DSM yet, but like of something like social media addiction, which would be a behavioral addiction, where you're like overly concerned about social media, you're driven to uncontrollable urges to log on or to use social media. You're devoting so much time and effort to social media that it maybe impairs other important parts of your life. Like if you've ever, oops, I'm just going to zoom in and out. If you've ever been with your partner or with a friend or with a family member, and maybe you're on your phone and you're on, say, social media, but you're also talking to them, notice how that really drives a wedge in that communication. And I actually sometimes this is a topic in couples counseling when I work with couples is one partner or maybe both partners are vegging out a lot on their phones and they're taking a lot of time and distracting themselves on social media and they're not really focusing and spending time with each other. And so it becomes an issue in the relationship, right? So it becomes an impairment. And so why is that? Well, our brain. Kind of like Samantha was saying, like how alcohol will affect your brain with those feel good chemicals, right? So, addictive social media use is going to look a lot like any other kind of substance use disorder, including like mood modification. So, maybe engagement in social media might lead to favorable changes in an emotional state. Oops, sorry, my computer is making noises. I don't know why. You might start to notice salience, which would be like behavioral, cognitive, and emotional preoccupation with social media. Let me click through here. You might notice tolerance, so like ever increasing use of social media over time, maybe even withdrawal symptoms. So when you're away from your phone, you're away from, if you go camping, you might find that there's a moment out there, or if you're on a hike where you're like, I wonder what is happening on social media, or, oh, this is a really cool picture. I should post this and share it with everybody who's not here at this moment, right? Or you find yourself taking particular photos for your Instagram because you're like, this is going to look so good on Instagram. And yet then you're doing it in that moment when you're hiking, right? Instead of just enjoying your hike, which again, I'm totally guilty of. I'm like, this is so beautiful. I want to share it with everybody. It's the reason we also probably take pictures of our food. And then there might be conflict. So going back to that interpersonal problems, maybe it starts affecting work. Maybe it affects your relationships. Maybe you're not sleeping as well at night because you're starting to you're starting to use you're on your phone or whatever, your iPad, whatever it is how you access it, because you're focusing on social media. And then there's that relapse. So you might notice in relapse that like if you quit, like Casey, you said you don't really use it anymore. Did you? I'm just going to call you out. Sorry. But did you notice, and you can say yes or no, and yeah, I would suspect it's greater than 5 to 10% too. Did you notice any relapse? Like, was it in the time you decided to decrease? Was that hard? You can just throw it in the chat, but I'm curious. And if any of you have ever tried to decrease that social media use, have you noticed that it's kind of hard, that maybe it's uncomfortable for a little bit before you kind of get used to the new way of being? Okay, so Casey says they noticed more time back in the day. So you maybe noticed like the positives and you were like, okay, this is pretty great, right? So how does it work? Well, it's about quick, convenient rewards, right? It's in your pocket. Think about how quickly you pull out your phone. I talk about phones a lot because that's, I think, of where most of us will access social media. So think about how quickly you pull out your phone for like quick moments of entertainment, even when you're like just a tiny bit bored. Notice how hard it might be if you're like at a red light and to just kind of sit there. Sometimes that's when we're just pulling our phone out. Or if you're in a work meeting, and especially now because everybody's in like these Zoom meetings, and and it's just so tempting to kind of like just grab your phone on the side, right? Um, and so you might notice that even at the slightest boredom, you're going to grab your phone. Or you might notice that you've paired this idea of going on social media as a way to sort of help you kind of relax and unwind at the end of the day. It's your way of checking in with people to see what's going on. Maybe you go there for a little sensationalism because you've got some really interesting relatives posting some really interesting stuff and you want to go on to see what they've said this time, right? So if you find yourself doing that, most likely without thinking, then that's because you're developing this habit with your social media. And just like we would associate, say, like pumpkin pie with Thanksgiving, or any other kind of feel good things, we're going to associate social media with certain things too, like quick entertainment or connection, information, relaxation, etc. And all of which is going to probably leave us to some degree with a good feeling, and that comes from our brain's reward center. And this is simplified science here, but the way this works is, so like studies have shown us that constant streams of like retweets and shares and all that stuff is going to affect the brain's reward center the same way that other drugs might, such as like cocaine. And there have actually been some really interesting social media studies with MRIs where they're showing people, like people who use cocaine on a regular basis, like they might show them that, and parts of their brain are going to light up. And then the same with people who have social media habits and addictions, that their brain will light up as well when they see social media, which is so fascinating. So in the beginning, it's these feel-good chemicals that motivate us to repeat the actions, and it reinforces our behaviors until they kind of become a habit. And, you could probably guess because you've most likely heard it, but like one of the main chemicals here is dopamine. Dopamine it affects like, we have 4 dopamine like centers in our brain, 3 of which are actually activated by social media. I believe the 4th is connected to like for mothers and like lactation. But so this is a chemical in our brain that's connected to reward, motivation, memory, even movement. And if you think about it, when you eat something really delicious, dopamine is going to be released. When you win, if you've ever played on a slot machine and you win on a slot machine, dopamine is released. And when you use, say, your phone for social media, dopamine can be released. And here's one I really love. When you talk about yourself, dopamine is released. And if you think about it, what do we do on social media? Well, often we are showing our photos, we're sharing our stories, we're making our comments, we're posting our ideas. All of that, in a sense, is about us, right? And so when you're on social media, you're going to be talking about yourself, or you're going to be kind of highlighting yourself a lot more, and that's going to help release some of that dopamine. And so, like I said, we have about 4 regions in our brain that are going to release dopamine. 3 become active when anticipating or experiencing rewarding events. And then they help reinforce the stimulus of or sequence of behaviors and the feel good rewards that follow from there, right? And so what social media features do you think, and this is a question I'm throwing out to you all, help us release dopamine? So whether you use Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat or, oh gosh, there's so many. I don't know if we will consider the new one Clubhouse, but I guess it's kind of social media. What kind of features can you look back to? Likes, exactly. Likes, one of the first real things that Facebook, I think, hit on when it came to recognizing the power of likes. Notifications, yep, just, hey, you have something important to look at. You should probably come back to our page and check it out. What about, yes, photos of friends and people you like? Exactly. Some of this gets naturally kind of curated because they're showing, they're encouraging us to contribute in a way to those features, right? So if we're following our friends and they're posting photos of themselves or places they're going, exciting, fun things, whatever, or just you have a connection with somebody, you want to see what they're up to, that in itself can kind of continue to pull you back in and also create that dopamine. Some other, when I talk about quick, convenient rewards too, so Samantha showed us some memes. That's another one that's so, or how many of us, tech will send that in a text to friends. Like, I don't know if I hear this pronounced different ways. I'll say it both ways, but, if you see a GIF or a GIF that you like and you're like, oh, that's hilarious. That's exactly what I'm thinking right now. And so you'll text that to a friend, right? These are things we're going to see on all social media platforms. They're funny. We connect with them. We maybe want to go do our own. Exactly. So, sorry, I'm reading the comments and just I'm talking to the people in the comments as if we're all here. So another one is like autoplay features, right? Autoplay features are another one. I know occasionally if I'm looking at Facebook and maybe I click on a video to watch it, I will then get like caught up in this like, conveyor belt of videos. And next thing you know, I'm like, wait, how many of these videos have I watched? A new one that maybe we don't think about. And because to some degree, it's actually a really, really positive thing. But notice, if you have your phone on mute, right, or silent, and you're scrolling through, say, Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and you see a video and it doesn't have captions, you're probably more likely to pass that video versus videos that have captions. Because if we have captions, then we can we'll just start reading it automatically, right? And that kind of pulls us in. And captions are awesome, right? Because they're actually expanding, of course, for people who need closed captioning. That's great. It's a great feature. At the same time, it also kind of pulls you in because it's really hard to not read. Once you learn how to read, you're reading everything. It's just automatic, right? So those are some ways that we kind of get pulled in and we release dopamine. What about, have any of you had a negative experience? Do any of you have, especially in the last, 4 or 5 years? I know and I've had this conversation with a lot of people lately, as far as around 4 years ago, there was a lot of political division in families. Now, of course, I think with COVID, there's been a lot more. There's additional division as far as how people are behaving, what rules they're following, what they believe, what they don't believe, etc. So sometimes we might go on and have what more of maybe a negative experience, right? Yeah. So Amanda deleted her account because negative experiences. Yes. And so when we think about it, if you're like, well, if I have lots of negative experiences, why would I go back? If everybody on my Facebook account is terrible, why do I keep going back? And honestly, they figured that out. So there's this thing called reward prediction error and variable reward schedules, right? And so yes, some of us will kind of hit that wall and we'll say, you know what, I'm done. I'm just going to delete this. And that's that. Right. And that actually happens a lot. This is where notice I have this little win. A lot of the development of social media has overlapped and taken information from slot machines and casinos and gambling, right? Because they know how to bring you back in. And if a slot machine if you play a slot machine and you push the little button and it goes and you lose, and then you push it again and you lose, and you push it again and you lose so many times, you don't even get a tiny, tiny reward. You're going to probably quit, right? Because that dopamine's going to decrease and decrease, and then you're just going to like walk away. But most social media in some way has found ways to actually kind of give you what's called like a variable reward. And so you might have noticed that like the last time you signed on to Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok, or oh my gosh, there's so many. Some I don't even, I'm like, I can't keep track of all of them. But what you might have noticed is that maybe they left you kind of like with a bad taste in your mouth. Depressing news all over Facebook, exactly. Annoying family members, maybe some traumatic videos that were really hard to watch, or annoying ads. And so we would assume that this would just kind of be enough for most of us. And for some of us, it actually is. But for many people, to some degree, that sensationalism, one, can pull you back in general. Like maybe you're just itching for a fight, so you want to go back to those annoying family members and have a comment, right? Or you're getting some sort of response in yourself, some sort of activation when it comes to reading what some of your, again, I'll say annoying family members are posting, and you're like, I got to go back and see what they said today. So sometimes that's enough to draw us back. But also when it comes to reward prediction error, which is where we can get this anticipation and this actual dopamine release before we even click on social media, because we're just so used to going to a website and getting some form of reward. So your brain's like, oh, we're going to go click on that. Great. And it already predicts, it already starts to feel good. So there's a little bit of that pulls us back. That's the same kind of gap in space. Again, I use slot machines because it's the same concepts, but where people will push that, I hate to say push the button. I know it used to be pull the lever. When you pull the lever and it's spinning and spinning and your heart is racing and there's anticipation, you've already have dopamine releasing in your body because you're like, maybe this time, right? Now, like I said, if it stops, if you have 6 times in a row where you don't win anything, you're going to quit. So variable reward schedule is going to keep us coming back, which means that you are going to get a reward, even if it's a small reward, on a more kind of randomized basis, right? And this goes back to behavioralism. And how, so like in a lab, they found that if they give a rat a treat every single time it pushes the button, eventually the rat's like, okay, cool, whatever. But if they give a rat a treat every like 3rd time, 6th time, 9th time, 3rd time, 2nd time, it's totally random, then the rat's going to push the button more, right? And I hate to say it, but sometimes we're the rats. And so we are just pushing those buttons more, like maybe if I just push it this time, something good will happen, or I'll find something, that's distracting and entertaining or whatever. So do you feel a little manipulated yet? This is how this works. Okay. So let's go on here. So like I said, here's our variable reward. It's one of the tools for manipulation. Let's move into that we get to back out of everything. So I want you to think about, for those of you who are still on social media and maybe want to change your habit, I want you to think about like what are your goals for when you are using social media? Like what are your we'll go ideal. What are your ideal goals? And what would you really hope? How would you hope to use it? Right? And you can post it in the box, or you can just kind of think about it. And then I want you to think about, how realistic are these goals? Like, have you tried them before? Have you hit a wall? Is there some resistance? Okay, so Jenny's saying, check in, then get off, no mindless scrolling. I like that. And I want you to think about what didn't work. So was there some part of you maybe that was convincing you to keep going? Did you feel like your mind turned off and you just kept going? What do you think? Yeah, keep family informed about significant news, not just what you're wearing or eating. I like that. Um, yeah, that's what a lot of people are posting about. And so I want to know too, do you believe it's possible to be on social media without having kind of a bad habit around it? So for some of us, cold turkey is what we got to do. Um, so yeah, to not use it as a procrastination tool. So notice, kind of like in Samantha's talk about alcohol, sometimes we use social media in a way that, we don't necessarily really even care what we're doing. It's just a great excuse or a great distraction for what we maybe are feeling or what we really want to be doing. And so it becomes that procrastination tool. Or for numbing, yes, exactly. Numbing is a huge reason. Like I said, when people want to veg out after work, that is a big one. And I say, like, I will totally even own, I don't use social media as much anymore, but occasionally, like if I wake up in the middle of the night and for some reason I'm feeling kind of anxious, I'll try to sit through it. And if I can't, sometimes I'll find myself just like grabbing my phone and trying to not think about anxiety, right? So like our phone has that convenience level to it. And then this stuff just kind of is so easy to pull up and get lost in. All right. So how do we make these changes? Well, the first one is, like I want you to think about, kind of what I said, like think about your reasons for still being on social media. Why are you still using it? And you're kind of, to some degree, telling me over here already. And then let's think about some changes when it comes to using our social media. So the first would be creating intentionality. Yes, I like Beth's comment about how taking a break was really helpful during the election cycle. Yeah, being on Twitter, and sometimes we create these like little thought bubbles. So we can stay in these groups that are like-minded and it makes us feel better, etc. So we want to talk about intentionality. So when we're intentional about our use, we're thinking and we're decreasing our impulsivity. And that means it's easier to not get caught up in things like mindless scrolling, right? And then we also want to change the cues here. So when we change the cues, we first are going to, you might even just take a list. You want to identify all the cues that kind of tell you to hop on social media. You want to even notice those ones where you're doing it without thinking. So I know for me, when I started thinking about this, which I'm not doing currently, but like standing in line at the grocery store, I was like, I'm just going to hop on my phone and distract while I'm waiting, to be checked out. Other times, like I'm a therapist, sometimes between clients, I would hop on, just check out what's going on, see what's happening with my friends who are, elsewhere. So notice your cues and make a little list of those so that you have an awareness. If procrastination is your cue, put that, like, when are those times that I want to procrastinate that I'm going to hop on social media, right? Or numbing. When are those times when I maybe feel like, maybe it's a feeling like I feel anxiety and then I hop on my social media, right? So changing our cues, we're going to start to identify them, and then we can start to change those habits and change the circumstances that are going to help you also become intentional. So one example of that too would be like a lot of people use their phones as their alarm, right? One way I did that was I have a non-Apple Watch, but it's a smartwatch, right? And it vibrates in the morning to wake me up instead of my own phone alarm going off. And so my wrist is vibrating, and that actually just wakes me up enough so that I don't need to have that immediate connection with my phone. So then we're going to also build awareness. I want you to think about how you feel. I want you to really start paying attention to how you feel right before you use social media and when you're using social media. And again, these might be things that you kind of take note of and you start to write down for yourself. because building awareness is going to help us become aware of some of our other cues, right? And then the next one is learn to relax. So when we are in this state of anxiety and we're like, I'm going to grab my phone, I'm going to hop on some social media, I'm going to numb my brain. I want you to learn to relax. So when we're in that anxious state, we're kind of in a fight or flight brain. And when we're in a fight or flight brain, it's hard for us to make good decisions. It's hard for us to necessarily be intentional, right? We have to be much more kind of reactive and ready to go. And you might think of fight or flight brain being like really, really activated, but really like fight or flight brain can happen throughout the day. Your partner can kind of give you a funny look and you're like, oh God, are they mad at me? Did I do something? You're hitting your fight or flight brain, right? It's any sort of perceived threat moment. You have a deadline at work, stuff that we might normally kind of categorize as stress. So you start to pay attention to that. And then within it, you use that as your first cue. I need to calm my body down before I move forward, right? So you're going to learn a few different relaxation techniques. And I'll put those, we have a little thing here. I should really learn how to point to those. Okay. So we'll relax in a second. And then the last one is self-regulate. And it's going to actually loop back up to intentionality. When we set our intentions and we are going through this process, that's going to actually help us to self-regulate, to make that final decision as far as how are we going to use social media? Are we even going to get on it? What do we want to do instead? Right? So here are some tools for relaxation, a few different ones. And I actually am going to send you all in this follow-up email. I wrote a little a guide on how to break your phone habit. And it overlaps very much with social media use, right? And so within that guide are worksheets, there's relaxation, step-by-step, links to YouTube channels and things to walk you through some of this. But and also I'll send all that to you in an email. But this progressive relaxation, so where you're kind of starting, you're going to start at your toes and work your way up. It's sort of similar to, Lisa mentioned it in her beginning exercise, that you're just sort of you can notice notice the tension in your body. You might squeeze your toes and release, and then work your way through the muscles in your body. There's also something really simple, is taking 3 deep breaths. Just helping to kind of regulate yourself, recognize I need to just take a moment and relax. And then one of my favorites is called the pelvic floor relaxation. And it is an exercise that's going to help it's going to help us. I'm trying to think of how to say it. It's going to help us stimulate our vagus nerve, which is a nerve that helps us calm our bodies down. And if we have time, I'm going to do it at the end for you all. So let's look and make sure. Okay. I'm going to see. Okay, so we are good. I can do that. So if you all are willing, I'm going to kind of run through a little bit of the pelvic floor relaxation, because it's one of my favorites, and it's one that you can actually do pretty much anywhere. Anytime. You can be on a Zoom call and do it and nobody will know. So what I want you to do is you're going to just take both your hands and you're going to find your pelvic bones. You're just going to kind of tap right around, kind of a little bit below where your belly button is, and then off to the sides. You're just going to kind of make this touch memory basically with your pelvic bones. And then you're going to take your hands, I almost said the same hands as if we have extra sets, and we're going to sit on them and feel our sit bones, right? And you're, again, just kind of touch point memory here. And now you can take your hands up now, and now I want you to notice those 4 points and where they are in your body. You might want to close your eyes. And I want you to imagine you're drawing a box. You're connecting all of those points, right? They're all connected. And you might notice that your belly kind of relaxes a little bit. Maybe it's already just relaxing to kind of make that connection. And then what I want you to do is just as you start to breathe in, you're going to breathe in, and the box is actually you're just going to imagine that box kind of getting bigger and smaller. So everything in your hips and your buttocks, everything's going to actually kind of just like relax and give you space. So just inhale and exhale. I like to have my hands following along just because it helps me a little bit, but I'm just going to notice that sort of like expanding space as you inhale, and then it kind of goes back together a little bit. It expands, goes back. And if you want to add an extra layer to that, what you can also do is kind of visualize the core center, your core going through the middle of that box. So that can add an extra little layer there. And you don't have to worry about flexing your abs or anything like that. We actually want everything to be as relaxed as possible. And so then when you're done with this, I just want you to take a note. And it's not always the easiest thing to do from the beginning. So it's okay if you're not perfect at it. Don't worry about it. But I also want you to then, just when you're all done, take a moment and imagine that expansion again. Imagine just letting your hips and everything kind of just spread out. And notice how that feels in your body. Notice if you're able to to do that. So this is something that you can do, like I said, when you're on a Zoom call, or even if you're in person with somebody. You can just take a moment and notice if you're starting to feel kind of activated or tense, and just let yourself kind of like relax. And this can be especially powerful for women, because a lot of research shows that women actually tend, and I love this little fact, but that women tend to hold tension in their buttocks. And so when women are tense, they might not recognize, but they're actually like tensing up in their buttocks. And so they've got this, so this exercise can help kind of like release and relax that. All right. So like I said, I'm going to send out an email with that guide. It's going to have a lot more details. It's going to have worksheets and more information for you. I would like to know, I know we had, I think Jenny mentioned the trying not to mindlessly scroll. And I have a tool for that. And then I would like to know if you all have any thoughts or questions or anything. But so part of that idea of like changing the cues, changing the habits, changing the behavior can be thinking around, like what are the things I'm getting stuck on? And I know I was reading an article about someone in regards to social media and use, and they actually said they deleted all the apps on their phone. And what they do, because that's too convenient, right? And what they do is they actually take time in the morning, say, to hop on their browser and check, say, their Facebook. And they set a intention for themselves that what they will do is if they have any little alerts, they'll click on it and look at their alerts, but they don't scroll. And then they're just done, right? I know another way of doing that too is I will post for my business sites on like social media, but I use a third party so that I'm not, because it's so hard. You post on there, you're thinking about what you're going to post and write. And next thing you know, you're kind of scrolling through to see what other people are doing or what, but if this is something that you really don't have time to do that, and you're in the middle of, say, your work day, and then using a third party app that's just going to, you're just going to upload the image, put the text in and kind of let it go and do its own thing, that also can be really helpful. So building in maybe some barriers or setting aside specific, like I only check it on my laptop, or, setting aside certain moments of the day or places in your house or, any kind of thing like that. You don't have to be incredibly rigid because, that's not always realistic. I get that. But those things can be helpful. Does anybody have anything that they've done or want to share or any questions? And you're welcome to unmute if that's easier. Yeah, taking it off your phone really helps. Yeah, and you can't pull your laptop out at the grocery store. It'd be interesting if you were like, hold on a second, I'm bored. And I know a lot of us aren't standing in line at the grocery store anymore, but think pre-phone, what were we doing? Some people may remember that time, some people may not. But I know I was joking with a client the other day about this. We were talking about tabloids and how you got to read the ridiculous tabloids or at least see the covers. But you never bought the tabloids and you just let them stay there, right? And you read a new tabloid whenever you're standing in line at the grocery. All right. So if there aren't any questions, then we are going to go ahead and finish up here. I want to thank Lisa and Samantha for joining us today. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. We are going to, like I said, I will send you some information and follow up with all the speakers. And if they have any extras that they want to share, we'll put that in the email for you. So otherwise, we're going to let the class out early so everybody can have, an extra 15 minutes on your day to not be on social media, drink alcohol, or whatever the opposite of intuitive eating is. I don't know. Lisa might know. But thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. And join us again for one of our next wellness workshops. Oh, that's actually one question I have. If you have a wellness workshop that you would like us to do, a topic or anything, throw that in the chat box too, because we want to obviously create workshops that matter to you all and are interesting to you all. And so please let us know. All right?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. I just want to hop on and say thanks. I came for Samantha, but I learned so much from all of you all. So thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Appreciate it. Really good.
Great. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.